Trump's first presidency gave Washington a playbook of hardline tactics.
Trump introduced punitive tariffs on China, as well as trying to rebalance the trade deficit.
There's something that's shaking up global markets and could soon be hitting your wallet. It's the newest trade war between the US and China, the escalating trade war between the US and China. President Trump's latest tariff hikes, now pushing some duties over 100%, have ignited a firestorm, and the potential consequences are massive. We're going to break down exactly what's happening, what goods are affected, and how this could impact everything from your smartphone to the global economy. The specter of a full-scale trade war between the United States and China looms large, casting a long shadow over the global economy. Recent developments, including President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs exceeding 100% on Chinese goods imports, have ignited a fierce response from Beijing, which vows to fight to the end against what it perceives as U.S. coercion. The sheer scale of the trade relationship between these two economic giants underscores the gravity of the situation. In 2024, the total value of goods traded between the U.S. and China reached approximately $585 billion. This exchange, however, is characterized by a significant trade deficit for the U.S., amounting to $295 billion. While substantial, this figure, representing about 1% of the U.S. economy, is considerably lower than the $1 trillion figure frequently cited by President Trump.
Hey there, good morning everyone. I'm Errol Barnett in for Vladimir Duthier. The big story of the day, of course, new tariffs now in effect. We begin this hour with the sweeping round of new tariffs by the Trump administration in effect for dozens of countries. At 104% tariff is now in place on imported goods from China. That's the world's second largest economy. You've got new levies shaking up global trade, with many countries scrambling to bargain with the Trump administration about what comes next. All but China, that is, which announced just a few hours ago new retaliatory tariffs this morning on U.S. imports.
Both the Trump and Biden administrations have implemented significant tariffs on Chinese goods, contributing to a notable shift in U.S. import patterns. Over the past decade, the U.S. reliance on Chinese imports has decreased, with the share of Chinese goods in America's total imports falling from 21% in 2016 to 13% in 2023. The effectiveness of these tariffs, however, is complicated by the evolving strategies of Chinese manufacturers. The 2018 imposition of 30% tariffs on Chinese solar panels, for example, prompted Chinese companies to relocate assembly operations to Southeast Asian nations, such as Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This strategic move allowed them to circumvent the tariffs by exporting finished products to the U.S. from these intermediary countries. In response, the newly implemented reciprocal Trump tariffs extend to these Southeast Asian nations, aiming to close this loophole. This expansion of tariff coverage, however, is expected to drive up the prices of a wide range of goods in the U.S., ultimately impacting consumers. The trajectory of this trade conflict remains uncertain. The potential for further escalation is significant, with far-reaching implications for the global economy. As the situation unfolds, we must remain vigilant, prioritizing accuracy, objectivity, and comprehensive analysis. The ongoing trade dispute between the United States and China is more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It directly impacts the flow of essential goods and sets the stage for potential economic disruption. Understanding the specific goods traded between the two nations is crucial. In 2024, the largest U.S. export to China was soybeans, a key component of China's livestock feed, especially for its large pig population. The U.S. also ships pharmaceuticals and petroleum products to China. Conversely, China exports a wide range of goods to the U.S. These include electronics, computers, and toys, as well as batteries crucial for the growing electric vehicle industry. Notably, smartphones represent the largest single category of U.S. imports from China, accounting for 9% of the total. A significant portion of these smartphones are manufactured in China for Apple, a U.S.-based company. The existing 20% tariffs imposed by the Trump administration were already set to increase the cost of these imported goods for American consumers. The recent surge to 104% tariffs amplifies this impact fivefold, potentially leading to significant price increases. This directly impacts consumers.
Errol, China said that it would fight to the end, and it is making good on that threat as we see today. An all-out trade war between the world's two biggest economies will begin at 12:01 Beijing time if China follows through on those mind-boggling 84% tariffs on U.S. imports. Breaking that down, remember, that's 50% tariffs today, announced today, on top of 34% tariffs announced earlier in reaction to Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs.
Similarly, China's retaliatory tariffs will raise the price of U.S. goods in China, affecting Chinese consumers. The recent drop in Apple's market value, with its share price falling 20% in the past month, highlights the direct impact of these tariffs on U.S. companies reliant on Chinese manufacturing. The trade conflict extends beyond tariffs, encompassing control over strategic resources and technological capabilities. China holds a dominant position in refining essential metals like copper, lithium, and rare earth elements. Beijing could potentially restrict the flow of these metals to the U.S. This has already been seen in the case of germanium and gallium, materials vital for military applications like thermal imaging and radar. On the other hand, the U.S. could further tighten its technological restrictions on China, building upon the measures implemented by the Biden administration. This could involve limiting China's access to advanced microchips, crucial for technologies like artificial intelligence, which China currently cannot produce domestically. Adding another layer of complexity, Donald Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, has suggested that the U.S. could pressure third-party countries like Cambodia, Mexico, and Vietnam to cease trade with China as a condition for maintaining their trade access to the U.S. This strategy could have significant geopolitical implications, potentially reshaping global trade patterns. Potential impact of a U.S.-China trade war. The escalating trade conflict between the United States and China transcends bilateral concerns, posing a significant threat to the global economy. To ensure accurate and responsible reporting, we must prioritize factual precision and avoid any form of misinformation, presenting a clear picture of the potential consequences. The combined economic power of the U.S. and China is undeniable. According to the International Monetary Fund, these two nations account for approximately 43% of the world's economy in 2024. This substantial share underscores the potential for a trade war to trigger widespread economic disruption. A full-scale trade war, resulting in slowed growth or even recession in the U.S. and China, would inevitably have a detrimental impact on other countries. Global economic growth would likely decelerate and international investment would suffer. China's position as the world's largest manufacturing nation further amplifies the potential for global disruption. China produces significantly more goods than its domestic market can absorb, resulting in a substantial goods surplus approaching $1 trillion. This surplus is often fueled by domestic subsidies and state financial support, such as low-interest loans, which allow Chinese firms to produce goods at prices below their true production costs. Steel serves as a prime example of this practice. If Chinese products are denied access to the U.S. market, there is a risk that Chinese firms will dump these goods in other countries. While this could temporarily benefit some consumers through lower prices, it poses a severe threat to domestic producers, potentially leading to job losses and wage reductions. The UK Steel Lobby Group, for instance, has raised concerns about the potential for excess steel to be redirected to the UK market, highlighting the vulnerability of other economies to the spillover effects of a US-China trade war. The consensus among economists is that the spillover impacts of a full-scale US-China trade war would be overwhelmingly negative. The interconnectedness of the global economy means that the consequences would be felt worldwide. US and China exchange tariff increases. The trade conflict between the United States and China has intensified, with both nations implementing further tariff increases. The US recently imposed an additional 50% tariff on Chinese goods, bringing the total new U.S. duties to 104%. This move followed President Trump's threat to escalate tariffs unless China retracted its own retaliatory levies. In response, Beijing announced it would also increase its tariffs on U.S. goods by 50%, adding to the previously announced 34% increase. China's finance ministry criticized the U.S. action, stating it was a mistake on top of a mistake that harmed China's interests and undermined the global trading system.
Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. A full-blown trade war between the world's two biggest economies, the US and China, seems even closer as President Trump threatens to impose further tariffs on China. China says it will fight to the end after US President Donald Trump threatened to hit Beijing with an extra 50% tariff if it doesn't withdraw its retaliatory levy on Tuesday. Beijing's Commerce Ministry accuses the Trump administration of blackmail and says his tariffs are a typical unilateral bullying practice. China's Foreign Ministry has held a news conference and said trade wars have no winners.
Adding to the complexity, China released a report disputing claims of deliberately seeking a trade surplus with the US. Shortly after, the Ministry of Education issued an alert to students considering studying in Ohio, citing negative China-related provisions in a recent state education bill. Amid rising tensions, former President Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs with major trading partners, excluding China. The move, framed as an effort to ease economic pressures on American consumers and businesses, signals a continued hardline stance toward Beijing. "We're putting America first, but we're also giving our allies a chance to reset," Trump stated, while emphasizing that China would remain subject to existing tariffs due to unfair